Well, that's a great segue as we are then going to talk about said Pepperdine Waves and Ed Schilling in year 2 with this squad. Pepperdine, we're talking about a very different situation with the Waves. This was a team that was 13-22 last year. This was 4-14 in the WCC. Another team that also struggled on the road, 2-11 away from Firestone Fieldhouse. This Pepperdine team is also going to look a lot different from the team a year ago. No more Mo Odom, no more Stefan Todorovic. You have a lot of new faces on this team. And of the faces that are returning, and then of those that are coming in, I think the one thing that strikes me about the entire roster is that there's a lot of names that just we don't know a lot about their experience. Like the pedigree might look good. You have consider where some of these guys transferred from, but we don't have the proof on the court. And I think what we're obviously going to see a lot of that this year. And for me, it's really starts with the two guys who were the big transfers last year, who we didn't get to see much at all, are Javon Cooley and Aaron Clark.
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. And I think you mentioned the pedigree. You look at a guy like Pavlik Stosic coming in from Gonzaga. You know, what is he going to be? I look at another returner, Danilo Dozic, a very capable stretch forward. And the way I view Pepperdine is you're not competing for a conference championship this season. And I don't mean that in any offense whatsoever, but it's just in terms of, okay, what are we trying to build here? You look at Ed Schilling and his group as they finish up the Firestone Fieldhouse and basketball facility structures over the course of this time. What's it going to take to continue to take those next steps? And I think it requires more of a floor in terms of its talent. I think you look at this year's roster. I don't know if it would be fair to say yet that they have the talent of last year's team, at least by the end, in terms of the way it all came together, especially when you mention a guy like Mo Odom, who made the all-conference team. I do want to see how Javon Cooley kind of like implements himself. Can Dozic, with a higher burden of expectation, find a way to do something? And you just look a lot of the international flavor, a lot of Balkans on this Pepperdine team. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the comparison that there is a Southern California team with a guard that wears number 77 that's named Luca on this Pepperdine roster. Again, you know, look at me being Mr. Conspiracy Theory after saying all first team yak. All first team name with Oregon State, but Luka Vujagovic, you know, like how do all these guys kind of fit in? Because he comes in from a pretty premier Serbian leagues, like in Europe. Like those leagues do not mess around. I think you look at the way everything's trying to come into form for Ed Schilling and his crew. I think more than anything, you don't want to see the bottom fall out. And I don't want to doom and gloom any Pepperdine fans, but you definitely want to see a way where you can capture that lightning in a ball that you had from the conference tournament last year and find a way to punch above your weight. Because I think we kind of, if you classify it in boxing terms of weight classes, Pepperdine's not in the top weight class. They're not in the second weight class. Can they find a way to be in that third weight class?
I think the thing about Pepperdine that strikes me this year is, again, you mentioned the international flavor of this squad. But I think it's also maybe taking it a different way of how to build the roster, because I think right now Pepperdine kind of has to try to do something a little different, because it's going to be hard for them to be in the recruiting conversations, even with the likes of like an LMU or a Santa Clara, because the NIL just isn't at that stage. And also the pedigree of the program just is not there yet. But you look at the fact, Aaron Clark coming over from Wake Forest, a lot of pedigree when you think about what he's bringing in. You look at Styles Phipps coming over from GCU. Again, another program that's actually had a couple of different guys coming over to the WCC. Aaron Maurer, the other one, going up to Seattle. You have even guys coming over from Yale. Yassine Garam, the grad guard, coming over. He only got to play in 8 games last year, but 6 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists. This is someone who's going to give you a lot of solid play on the court. And I think that's what we're probably going to be looking at, is a lot of solid play from this Pepperdine team. Obviously, we are in agreement that the ceiling's not really all that high for this Pepperdine team, but there is a chance to, again, continue to build a foundation. I still think that's what Pepperdine is, that they have to try to do. It's not only building the foundation of their actual building, but also of this team. And where they are headed, I think if the principles can kind of be put into place, this team starts to have this program starts to have a personality that matches Ed Schilling and what he's trying to accomplish. For me, this ends up being kind of like the how Pepperdine wins this year is that they you know who Pepperdine is. They have an identity, and I think we're starting to see that with some of these teams. I think think about Pacific and way they've kind of been able to transform in year one under Dave Smart. I do feel like we're starting to see and saw a little bit more of that toward the end of last season as Pepperdine started to play a little bit better and made that run in the WCC tournament.
I like how you did mention kind of like the process, and I think maybe part of that conference tournament run last year kind of colluded like what we should kind of come to expect from Pepperdine. And when you kind of mentioned that process, you do need to learn how to win. And I think when you see how this roster has kind of been reshuffled, given all the departures and additions, Pepperdine needs to kind of relearn how to capture that magic. You think of a guy like how much can you lean on Danilo Dozic to kind of implement what it takes to kind of win a game on the road, considering they've done it at neutral sites. I think when you consider, at least from my perspective, I don't question Ed Schilling's leadership because to me, he says all the right things. To me, I think when you ask for what type of coach is going to give you some of the best locker room speeches, I think Ed Schilling would be chief among them in this league. And I think you consider how does that kind of translate to his players? How does he find a way to kind of inspire possibly guys who maybe haven't realized their potential? Does he unlock Pavle Stosic compared to maybe how he didn't get the opportunities at Gonzaga? Can he kind of internalize and kind of manipulate a way to find to make his players feel confident that they can contribute at this level, and then in addition go find ways to win games? I think you mentioned that process. I think they're starting to climb that ladder, and I think it's something where you have to kind of lean into the fact of, yes, you're going to face adversity. Yes, it's going to be painful at times, but can you go upset LMU at home in a rivalry game? Can you maybe go on the road and go beat Pacific? Can you find a way to upset maybe a Washington State at home or something like that? Can you find a way to continue to internalize who you are, build that identity, and eventually, at least for me, the biggest thing, where's the on-court leadership going to come from? Is it going to continue to be Dozic? Can Javon Cooley step in, even though after his absence last year, and kind of help be the on-court general, so to speak, for what Ed Schilling's trying to implement for this team?
I mean, and I think the schedule does help them kind of try to, again, it's figure who you are and then be able to learn how to win. You look, again, the non-conference, always kind of like have to take them with perspective because Pepperdine obviously is going to be toward the bottom of the conference. So looking at a non-con with Northern Colorado, New Orleans, Stephen F. Austin, Fresno State, Fullerton, Abilene Christian, it gives them an opportunity to build themselves up, to develop some level of personality, learn how to win some of these games before you get into WCC play, because the schedulers actually did them no favors because they have both Gonzaga and St. Mary's right off the bat in conference play. But at the very least, then it's kind of like you take your big lumps right at the beginning, and then it might get a little bit easier. Although I say that I'm staring at, okay, they host Gonzaga, host St. Mary's right before the new year, and then they go on the road for Santa Clara Pacific San Diego. So it could snowball on them just based on the way it got set up. But if you can hold your own and kind of play, at least your head up above water in those two games, build a little confidence in non-conference, it will get easier the rest of the way.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think you learn more about yourself through what could be adverse times this to start their conference season compared to like if you were sandbagging a team and you found ways to win, but you didn't necessarily give your best effort. So I think Pepperdine, more than anything, I think they're going to find out who they are about in regards to one another pretty quickly throughout this conference season. I think, as you mentioned, can they find a way to not make it snowball from at least from our perspective, because we think it'll probably be more than likely an 0-3 start. Can they find a way to just make sure that it's not going to have the train fall off the tracks or anything like that? And I think Ed Schilling is the right person to make sure that that doesn't happen. But then, yes, how can you turn that around, take those next steps, and learn how to win games that maybe you do have a chance to win? And again, you don't want to dismiss teams right off the bat, but I think it's important to kind of contextualize the journey of where Pepperdine's at and knowing that they're trying to continue to be like teams that are trying to graduate from this tier in San Diego and Pacific. Can they be another team chief among them that could graduate into that next tier of teams?
Yeah, and I think we talked about the tiering, we're talking about like just what we expect or we're predicting these teams to be going into the year. I mean, The bar, unfortunately, for this team on the low end is, well, it's last in the conference. Like, unfortunately, like this is one of those teams that just is trying to figure out a way to climb out of that bottom tier on a consistent basis. They were in that bottom tier still last year, but considering where they were the year before, it was a lot better. So this is like, again, we're talking about steps. Year two, new head coach, new AD, kind of like new situation for the Waves, a new building on the way within the next 12 months. They'll be in that new facility of theirs. So this is something, there's a lot of excitement to be had for this Pepperdine program. And I mean, for me, like, I mean, the ceiling, for me, it's probably a little bit smaller of a ceiling. It's like, I think it's 10th. So like somewhere between 10th and 12th is probably where Pepperdine is going to wrap it up this year.
Yeah, I'm in a pretty similar boat. I think their floor is also 12th in conference, and I'll probably give them just a tick higher just because of what we've seen and how they've kind of gone on a winning streak. So you know that there's something in there to be tapped into. Obviously, Nomo Odom makes that a little bit different in terms of trying to drive that car. As I learn the language of English, surely I don't know it. For me, their ceiling is ninth. I think that's just. I don't think we're too terribly different from one another on this. I just think to me, they have a little bit more benefit of the doubt compared to teams like San Diego and Pacific. And while we've projected San Diego a little bit higher, I think, at least for me, I like proof of concept evidence. And at least Pepperdine could say that they've fought above their tier at certain times, but now they have to re-rack and do it again.